Hey, Tannah, how's it going?
Hey, Holly. Good. How are you?
I'm good. So we're going to talk about Enneagram 3s today.
Sure.
2s last week, 1 the week before that. So on to Enneagram 3s. Before we jump into that, though, I do want to do a little quick introduction about why anyone should care about us talking about the Enneagram. Tannah and I are both IEQ 9 certified coaches with that Enneagram tool and have worked with the Enneagram probably collectively, if you were to look at the number of years, for like 7 years. Yeah. And so we're just really wanting to use this podcast, the Enneagram Adventure, as a place to talk about and share the Enneagram with others and hopefully help them move through their own Enneagram kind of thoughts or curiosities in their own life. Did I miss anything?
No, I think just that Enneagram is based off your core motivation rather than your behaviors of more traditional personality assessments. I think the thing that folks will hear us talk about more often than not is when it developed, and it developed a really, really long time ago. It's how you survived your household, how you survived your childhood, how you became the individual that you are, deeply rooted in the core tenets of how you developed as a person.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good call out. And so as we talk about Enneagram 3s today, we'll probably touch on how in childhood that might have shown up for them.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, something like that.
Yep.
So, Enneagram 3s. Enneagram 3s are often called the competitive achiever, sometimes just the achiever, sometimes the performer. The core motivation for Enneagram 3 really is from this place of that they got their value through achievement. And so that could show up a couple of ways in terms of how they were rewarded and or reprimanded in their family system. So to the point Tannah made just a minute ago. So it could have looked like a household where every time you did something, it was celebrated in some big way, right? To lead you to believe that when you do something or you achieve something, that then you gain reward and love and affection for that thing. Or it could have been that on the sort of flip side, right? You had a parent that was really driving hard, pushing, and the outcome was the same, but maybe it wasn't that same celebration thing. Maybe it was you have to be the best or sort of this demand for excellence from a parent.
Um,
Is there anything you would add?
no, I think as we get into it, it'll become pretty apparent what this could feel like and look like for a 3, but also if you have a 3 in your life, what that could look like and feel like for somebody else in the outside of that. I think that this is where if you hang on with us, I'm trying to do a little teaser at each one of these because if you hang on with us, if you remember our episode about 2s, I'm a high feeler. Generally speaking, 2s tend to be more of a feeling number, which is a wing to a 3 whose emotions are not well tended to, is the
Yes.
nicest way that I can put that.
Yeah. So we could talk about that first. So 3s in their sort of drive for success and their drive for sort of all of the things associated with success, right? So they might be folks that are really motivated by title or really motivated by, sort of the outward appearance of things. And I say that because that can be I try to say that in a way that's not triggering for folks because it can be triggering because it's like, no, I'm not materialistic. Or no, there's a rejection of that. But they kind of have this, I need to keep up appearances in order for me to be respected, loved, all of that. I have to keep up this appearance of success. And they attach a lot of value to that. But in that, there's a lot of things that behavior wise that we just love about 3s because they are hard driving, wired for success people. They tend to be, great in business or great leaders because of this drive for success and this want to perform and show up the best way possible, all of those things. But what can happen is that they find that their feelings sort of get in the way. So they bury them or they set them aside and think, okay, I have this feeling coming up, but I don't want to deal with that feeling. It's going to get in the way of whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve in this moment. And so I'm going to set it aside. And what happens over time, often for threes, is that they set the feeling aside, they bury it, they think they're going to get to it later, set it aside, keep setting it aside until all of a sudden something happens and all of the feeling comes out at once. And I heard a three once describe this as it coming out sideways. And so that might look like unreasonably angry or kind of blowing up over something small that they normally wouldn't blow up over. But it's all in that, to your point, they're not tending to the feelings as they're coming up. And so then they come out maybe in an inopportune time.
Other things I've heard threes say are feelings are inefficient. So in all of the things that a three sets out to do, because achievement is the number one priority, or that next work thing or that next level, they're always looking to level up. Like it's a constant chase for that next level. And
Yeah.
in that they can get lost in all of that. And then that emotion, to your point, piles and piles and piles up. And
Right.
the unhealthy side of that can look like it being displaced in a little bit of low side of two behavior of I don't have enough time. You're not considering how much time I put into this. You're not considering how much effort I put into this. I don't have enough time in a day. When really what
Right.
they want somebody to meet them with when it feels like that sometimes is I see the achievement. I'm proud of you. And
Right.
giving them that moment of recognition will oftentimes help kind of aid in that really emotional sideways reaction to your point.
I think to go back, because we kind of dived right off the deep end on this one into feelings, but to back up a little bit more to behaviors. So if you're thinking, well, I might be a three, but I don't know. And it's not just the behaviors. Again, it's that motivation. But some things that you see a lot of threes, right? It's this, there is a strong, strong desire to win. And so I know, again, another example of a three in my life who would talk about things like playing Candyland with their kids and having this like desire to really win at Candyland with a 5-year-old, right? And it's just, there's things like that where it's like, it doesn't necessarily even make sense why they would want to win so bad in a situation like that. Or to your point, right? They are constantly striving for the next thing, the next achievement, the next plaque they can hang on their wall, the next degree, the next whatever that thing might be that kind of is like, yes, I'm special. I have achieved all of this, right? And that kind of sets them apart in that way through the achievement. And they get very attached to it. They put all their identity into what they're achieving. So it could be, I have an MBA, and that becomes like the whole identity of them wrapped up in the achievement of having gotten an MBA.
Right. It's back to that chase for that next thing.
Yeah.
And some threes that I know have said that they became a three because of the critic that they had in their household growing up, where maybe mom or dad was a doctor or a lawyer or a really high level individual in a community. And they kind of set about their life thinking, okay, I have to achieve X. I have to do X. I have to go to that school.
Right.
And if I don't, then be criticized or I'll be ridiculed or some of those more negative behaviors that can happen when ultimately you're an adult who has performed their whole life and now you want the same thing for your children.
Yeah.
And it's so it can show up on the critic side, but it can also show up on the praise side where it's like I get love if I do that thing.
Right.
If I get straight
Yeah.
A's, if I am on the honor roll, if I go to that school. if I major in this. That's the other thing about a couple
Right.
of the threes in my life, speaking of majors, is they actually set about picking their major based off of what their parent did, thinking, "This is my path. I have to do it this way."
Right.
When sometimes that can read like a 1, right, in some form or passion, but difference being
Yeah.
that inner critic for a 1 is so loud when the 3 is a driver. Like, I am driving to this.
Yeah.
Come with me or don't. Hell or high water, I will get there.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. Don't
yeah,
care. We're going.
we're going.
Yeah.
We're going. To that point, one thing that I love about the 3s in my life is, for one, the 3s in my life that I know of have all competed in sports to some extent,
Yeah.
but they make some of the best coaches in my life, where when I am
Yeah.
down, I know I can go to one of them and they'll give me 3 reasons why I should pick my head up and 1 reason why I need to get my ass moving and I'm better than the feeling that I'm having in that moment, and I'll get on the other side of it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think you would think I would know a lot of
Right.
threes in the triathlon
You don't?
community, and there's not as many of them that I can just be like, yeah, off the top of my head, I know this one, this one, this
Yeah.
one. I would say more in my work life, I know more threes that kind of drive on the business side. I think that one thing to note is that threes, just like you said, in a healthy space can be just the best
Mhm.
coaches. But I can think of some threes that drive and competitiveness can put wedges into relationships because they see people around them as competitors and they haven't necessarily figured out how to win through other people, how to bring people along with them. If they're not careful in their relationships, that competitiveness can backfire on them, right? And they can end up losing things that are important to them for the sake of winning something that's maybe less significant.
Some of the 3s that I've known that have had their toughest moments are when their reputation has been challenged in some form or fashion, whether that be in their family dynamic or if that be in a friend dynamic, are the 2 spaces I'm thinking about. And it's because of exactly what you just said. They didn't bring somebody along where
Yeah.
that other person really wanted that credit or that recognition or to be brought in by that person. They felt very much like a stepping stone. I don't think that it's of ill intent at all. I think that's where I don't want any
No.
3s getting triggered by that, because there's amazing gifts in that level of tenacity and grittiness and the ability to pick themselves up and keep moving no matter what.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's there is no, and I think as we talk about the, let's call them less healthy things in every number, it's never intentional. I would say I've never experienced in the cases like this with a 3 where they did it on purpose. It's been in that competitive nature where they didn't catch themselves and they weren't aware of how that competitiveness was coming off to the people around them or how the competitiveness was alienating people around them. I think of things like, you like the saying, right? That, that people talk about, oh, the sore
Mhm.
loser. Well, what's worse than a sore loser is a terrible winner, right? So that sometimes that's how the threes can come off is this
Yeah.
like that, right? And they don't realize it because they're like, I won, I achieved, I did the thing. I think about it with being a kid
I was
and playing
just gonna
Monopoly and you
say.
always have like the
Yeah.
one. Yes. And they're just so excited. There was no intent. They didn't intend to hurt anybody through that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just gonna say that Keegan, my 6-year-old, is trying on 3 and has been trying on 3 for a few months now. And the level of competitiveness is real, down to there is
Yeah.
every time you walk up the stairs with him, it is a race, and he will win.
Yeah.
Every time you are, you know, doing something even remotely the same, he is gonna be the one to go, "Okay, I'm done. I won." And
Yeah.
for him also, what I've learned is in the classroom, in kindergarten even. So for parents who listen, I've noticed my kids try on different things and no pressure as parents, right? All the pressure in the
Yeah.
world. But what are you going to reward? What are you going to, punish? What are you going to do that ultimately fuels that for them to think, okay, that's what I have to do to feel
Right.
love or to feel safe or to feel any of the things that we desire to feel as our number, right? So no pressure, but it shows up in the classroom in kindergarten right now where it even came back on his report card. Like he is the first one to raise his hand and he will raise it the highest. Like he needs to stay.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing with some of the threes I know in my life is they kind of have to have the last word
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
yeah, but have you thought of this? Yeah, but have you? And
Right.
uh my second highest number is a 3. So, on the particular Enneagram that both Holly and I use, that IEQ 9 test, it'll show you, where you're at, numbers 1 through 9, and 3 is my second highest number. And for me, that shows up in the level of work that I will continue to take on. That's also a little 2, right? Like, I'll just keep piling it on
Yeah.
and I'll ignore my own feelings until I can't anymore. So that's a little 3-ish, but it's the level of resilience in a 3 that I think is my favorite quality
Yeah.
in a 3.
Yeah. I think they're pretty great at not letting, for the most part, they're really great at not letting failure stop them from continuing to drive forward.
Mhm, mhm.
And so, all right, that didn't work. We're going to go at it another way. We're going to find another path. We're going to try something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think worth mentioning is back to our earlier comments around 3s being a bit disconnected from their feelings. So, a reminder for anyone who's listening throughout any number that you hear us talk about. If it is your number, if you're triggered by it, it's likely the work that you have to do. If you're triggered by the fact that you're a 3 and we're telling you that you're not in touch with deep emotion, the work is probably getting in touch with deep emotion.
The goal in this, right, is for everybody to like find the best version of themselves in a really well-rounded way. And that means you're going to have to do that messy stuff that really is uncomfortable and you don't want to do. It's going to mean digging into those feelings and allowing yourself to have them and being okay with it, not judging them, all of that. So that is going to be part of it. And part of our goal here, right, is to help you get out of the box of your Enneagram number. So if you are a 3, you're like, feelings are inefficient, I don't have time for them. Well, that's a box you're putting yourself in, and you're not getting to experience the fullness of life that you could be experiencing if you allowed all of those emotions and feelings to come through.
Right.
And I promise you, you have them all. It's not that you are devoid of the emotions. You have all of them. You're just trying to ignore them or numb them or whatever the thing might be.
My question related to 3s for you, Holly, is do you feel like 3s, when they are in the best version of themselves, go towards that higher side of their number? Where do you see that behavior sit when a 3 is in a really good spot?
In my experience, when threes are at their most healthy, they are so great at bringing people along with them and this sort of, we're all going to win together. And they know how to bring each person along. One of the kind of hallmark things of threes and what makes them so good at that is they can be a little bit, I'm going to say chameleon-like, but you have to go with me on this journey of what I mean by chameleon-like. And that is that they know when they're talking to folks how to sort of adapt their messaging to help that person that they're talking to buy in, to help them get it, right? When they're healthy and they're doing that, people are quick to get on board with them. They're like, oh yeah, that they get me, they understand me. And then, we touched on this before, I think too, when threes are really healthy, they're just such great coaches because it is that, how do we all win?
Mm-hmm.
How do I help you win? I win when you win. And they kind of bring that along with people.
That resonates with me and the 3s that I have in my life. I think that the flip to that I see for them is how that reputation and that ego can be so strong in them when they are unhealthy, as can most numbers, right? But for a 3,
Yeah.
it particularly stands out because they are worried about, what does this look like for me? Does this challenge my reputation? Does it challenge my brand with how people see me? Does it damage any of my achievements that I've done? And does it lessen my value? Is the feeling that it drives. And you can almost see when a 3 kind of goes to that place of really wanting to defend themselves, and that's where ego comes out, right? Or ego is a defense mechanism for any and all
Yes.
numbers.
Yep.
No matter what, as a human being, your ego is there to protect you from things that you perceive are a threat to you.
Right.
And for a 3, that shows up as defending my reputation, defending this thing I built, defending this idea that I have. And
Right.
it can read defensive and it can read a little on that low side of ego protection. And there's a few different resources that you and I talk about regularly. Cy Wakeman being one of them in her book, No Ego, where
Yeah.
it's really challenging yourself to take 5 steps back, separate yourself from the idea or the thing it is that you're being so protective about. Separate your value from that because you're valuable as a person, not as
Right.
your. So if there are
Right.
any 3s that we can reach, it's think about those things that you are so passionate about. Why are you passionate about them? Go through kind of like work backwards from it to be able to get to a space of objectivity.
Right.
And that might feel safer for a 3 even because then feelings could get removed, emotions could get removed when the trigger happens.
Right.
Which brings me back to most of the 3s that I know in my life, if they need if they need a minute, it is literally separating themselves from everyone. It is taking their dog for a
Yes.
walk.
Yep.
It is
Yep.
putting earbuds on and escaping into their own self.
Right.
So if you're a 3 and you're struggling to find that regulation when you are triggered, that might be helpful.
Right. Yeah. Do that. Go for a walk. I can think of 3 that I know that recently that's exactly what they did. Right. Emotions got kind of hot. The answer was, I need a break. I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna take 20 minutes and go work through this in my own way. So I do think that's really great advice for 3s that might be struggling with that. I think 3s in a healthy space, I really like them as leaders. And to some of the things we've talked about around ego, when they're less healthy, it can be more difficult to work for them. But I think just like everybody, right? It's that understanding that too much of something in excess can become a weakness. It's getting back to that. How do you bring that right kind of competitive edge without pushing it to the point that it does the opposite of what you want it to do?
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important thing for threes to think about too, is that there's the right middle ground to come to.
Yeah, you certainly don't want the burnout to hit from all of the compounding achievements and the compounding things that you want to get done and accomplished. I think that resonates for a lot of numbers. So, a good reminder too of like,
Yeah.
even if we are talking about a different number, there might be something in here that folks find that they can use for their own. And I do want to talk about too, if you have a 3 in your life, how do you give them critical feedback? How do you have disagreements with a 3? And how do you best support the relationship that you have with the 3 in your life?
Yeah, I think in terms of giving them feedback, I think most threes want
Mhm,
feedback because they do want to get better. It feeds the
mhm.
achievement, right? If you don't tell me that I'm not doing the thing the way you want it done or whatever it is, then I can't fix it. I can't make it better. I think that's true for every number, but for threes, right? They want it because they want to get
Yeah.
better. So there is that part of it. But I think it's important when you give threes feedback that maybe they're not expecting. It can be important to give them credit for where they are working really hard and help have, as part of the feedback, a plan, or part of the feedback is allowing them to have the conversation back with you of how do we make the plan to move it forward. Don't let the feedback just sort of hit and then wash your hands of it and walk away. The 3 is going to want to have the opportunity, and maybe they do need a moment to reflect depending on the feedback, but they are going to want to be able to talk about, okay, well, here's the plan of how we're going to make this better, how we're going to move this forward together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so for sure. The 3s that I can think of in my life can be a bit caught off guard by feedback because they are held in such high regard, right? So when negative feedback finds them while they want it so they can get better, it can sometimes catch them off guard.
Right.
So I think it's important if you are going to give it, just laying the groundwork for it. But the best 3 feedback conversations that I've ever seen, even over the smallest of things, are better done when they've had a moment to prepare. As
Yeah.
with most people, right? Like, who wants to get blindsided with critical feedback?
Right.
Everybody wants to get
Yeah.
blindsided.
And I think that's a fair thing to call out for anybody that you're going to be sharing feedback with is, it's even just asking them, hey, I have some feedback for you. Can I give that to you now? And then honoring it if they're like, actually, now's not good. Doesn't mean they're off the hook. Often, if you just say that, I have some feedback I'd like to give you, it can help just take the edge off where it's not as if you just kind of word vomited at them the feedback that you have.
Right. Right.
So I think a little bit like when we talked about ones, right? It's that being thoughtful when we're going to have tough conversations.
I think it's, to your point too, recognizing the things that they are doing well can be helpful. So
Yeah.
while you don't want to lessen the feedback depending on what it is, if it's something that they need to just hear directly and clearly, give it to them that way. But I would say with any 3, just making sure that you don't forget the recognition that they need as well.
Right.
A 3,
And that's not to feedback sandwich.
no,
Because I would not
no,
advocate hit
do
feedback
not
sandwich.
feedback
We're not
sandwich. Do
saying that.
not.
Yeah.
100% no. Worst sandwich on the menu.
Yeah.
But I think that a 3 does want recognition. So when you balance that, right? Have your uncomfortable feedback conversation. Move on. Keep it moving. Don't forget that while a 3 wants to get better and wants feedback, It's also helpful for you did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your work, all of your time, all of your effort. And I know that you
Right.
don't have much of it. It's also for a
Yes.
3, it's recognizing the scarcity and the resource that they have in themselves driving.
Okay. Well, another thing is probably worth touching on for 3s, and we'll try to remember this as we go through all the numbers, is the orientation to time. And 3's orientation to time is the future. And that's part of, I think, what pushes them in that hard driving, need to win, constantly setting goals. What's next? What's next? What's next? Is because they are so future focused. And it can really, that idea of the next big goal or the next big accomplishment, they can kind of romanticize that in their own mind as they dream out into the future or plan out into the future for the next big thing they're going to do.
Does that mean, do you think, Holly, it's similar then for a 1 where uh, because they can get lost in because they can get lost in all of the things that they need to do, like the lists for 1s, is that similar
Oh
to
yeah.
that?
Yeah. That can be similar. Threes will also tell you they love a list, and they will also tell you that they put things on the list just so they can have the achievement of crossing it off. 3s definitely will tell you that. There's a friend of mine who talks about that often. She's a 3. But I would say, so it's similar. The difference is for the 1s, it's not necessarily that same motivation again. And 1's orientation to time is the present, right? So they can't relax until everything is taken care of. It's a little different.
Okay.
Whereas the 3 is like driving the list. It's for the feeling of accomplishment. It's for the feeling of the finish line for 3s that are maybe into sports or running, right? It's for the feeling of the finish line. And
Oh my god, that makes so much
so
sense
sometimes
for
what happens is they miss.
that
Oh,
makes so
go
much
ahead.
sense for
There
my
was like a.
Peloton rides. Makes so
Oh,
much sense.
yes.
My
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
highest number is 3, and I am like, I will feel so much better after Allie Love kicks my butt for 30 minutes. I'm gonna
It's the focus on the end point rather than the journey. And while I mentioned I don't know a ton of triathletes that are 3s, I do know some. And there can be this always chasing the next finish line moment. And as they're always chasing that, they miss all of the moments that are the journey that get you from signing up for the race to the next one. And I have a few friends that I suspect are 3s. It has not been confirmed, but it can even be like finish the race and immediately sign up for the next one because that race day or that finish line feeling is so strong that then they forgot. Oh, this meant 8-hour bike rides and 6-day a week, 2-a-day workouts. Like
yeah.
they forget all of that because they love that moment so much. And so they can just erase all of that.
So is the work for a 3 in that then slowing down to appreciate the emotion in the moment? And if you really flip that on its head, the more emotional work is because feelings are inefficient. I'm going to shove those down. I'll deal with those later. I'm future oriented.
Right.
I'm moving. I'm going towards this thing. But then they never really unpack it.
They never fully achieve the thing. And so I think the work actually is, how do you give yourself the grace to not attach your worth to that? How do you, just like we talked about, right? The value is in your humanness, not in your achievements. And how do you get comfortable with that idea? I think there's a lot of work in that. And then also can you just like, before you plan the next big thing you're going to do and achieve, can you just take a minute and celebrate the thing you just accomplished? I don't know if you've heard this about threes, but I've also heard things like they're kind of always raising the bar on themselves or moving the
Yeah.
goalpost, right? So it's like they never actually get there. So comes back to the race thing. And also why the other reason that they'll sign up for another race right away will be, well, I just ran a marathon, but I think I can do it faster. And then, right, then it's like, I will be worth more because I can run it faster than I ran it today.
Right. Right. So I can give you an example of like a real household example of that. So with my second highest number being 3, I can think about some times back when I was a kid where I would get like praise, right? And it was always like after a soccer game. If I had a good one, if I fought really hard, if my parent heard another parent saying a compliment, right? Then that's what would be celebrated. And it was always the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I remember back in, oh man, I forget how old I was. It was in high school at some point, and I bet one of my coaches in my last 2 games that I would score 3 goals, and if I did that, then I could suit up for varsity as a freshman for when they were in the playoffs. And I scored 5. And then I went back to
Of
that
course she did.
class, like, that very next week, and I was like, "Hey, I scored 5." He's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, a deal's a deal."
Yeah.
But I wasn't gonna stop at 3.
Right.
For what? I wanna go and be able to say I did 5.
Right. It's just a little
Yeah,
bit more. Just a little
a
bit.
little extra, just a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do 3s appreciate or shy away from public recognition?
Depends. So when we talk subtypes, which this is another teaser thing to really talk about subtypes, and I can briefly give an example of subtypes and threes just because, but self-preservation threes are not big public recognition people, where social threes really are. That an example, when I was getting certified in the Enneagram, that was given to me around subtypes with threes and sort of recognizing the differences between those 3 subtypes, was that, let's say there are 3 threes, they're all doctors. The social 3 will go and buy the $100,000 fancy car in a crazy color or all tricked out with all the bells and whistles, and they want everyone to notice, and they want to talk about it with everyone. I got a new car. Did you see it? I got a new car. It's amazing. Look at this. Car, right? The 1-to-1 3 will also go and buy the car. It'll be a little more subdued. It won't be as sort of out there in the open. Like, yes, they have it. They want people to see that they have it. They don't necessarily want to talk about it, but they have it. The self-preservation 3 will go buy the fancy car, get worried that people will think that they are like too big for their britches. They'll get worried about the image of having the fancy car, so they'll return it and buy a Prius. Right? So it's like the differences in how that works, right? All 3 of them, it's still that same, the image of this is important to me, but how it actually shows up in the subtypes is where you see the difference. And so what I would say is that self-preservation 3 is going to be the one that's going to not want as much public recognition.
Got it. Okay. So, difference with subtypes. So, it's the 3 different possibilities. There are 3, which I think that's super helpful. I don't know about you, but like as I learned more and more into Enneagram, and we'll get to subtypes, but it told me so much more about each number and the behaviors associated with it that point to that motivation. If you think about behavior, a person can do the same behavior to try to get to a different motivation. That's the difference. So someone could be, for example, in thinking about our threes, right? Someone could be really, really driven, really energetic towards a goal or an achievement, but that could look totally different from person to person
Right.
from a behavior aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could look like one person being the teacher's pet, but that could look like another person being, the best individual contributor
Right.
on a larger team that has ability to work alongside others in a really meaningful way. It just depends on a few different things, right? But I do think pointing back to how integrated you are into more of the 9 types goes back to you showing up a bit more healthy and a bit more balanced in any number. To that point, my question is, if you are a 3 and you are looking for more balance or more integration, where would you start?
Well, I think fully understanding your motivation and having awareness of it and how it shows up in the behaviors day to day with people is the first thing. I'd say that's the first thing for any number, right? First comes the awareness. But if you're looking, for more balance, it's going to be around finding what's going to sound like a dirty word to every 3 that listens to this, and that is finding some contentment, right?
Ew.
Yeah. How can you be content with what you have, content with what you've achieved without immediately jumping to the next thing, whatever that is, the next promotion, the next race, the next car, the next house, whatever it might be.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I know you've heard me talk
So
about this, but
go ahead.
sometimes when I teach the Enneagram to groups, I'll share, I can't remember the actress's name, but she was Blair on Facts of Life, and she's an Enneagram 3, and she talks about that publicly.
Yeah. Yep.
But she was quoted as saying that as she learned about the Enneagram and about her 3-ness, right? It was a struggle for her to sit and think about the possibility that it was okay to be ordinary. That's that same idea. Can you sit with yourself and accept that you might just be an average human? And I
Yeah.
know a whole bunch
Speaking
of
of
them
dirty
just like turned
thoughts,
this
yeah,
podcast off. Yeah. A whole bunch of 3s
yeah,
just like,
that
no.
like
Yes.
hell no.
Yeah.
You're crazy.
Right.
But like, wow, what would that feel like? What would that feel like for a 3?
Yeah.
Super
Yeah.
uncomfortable at first.
Right.
Super uncomfortable. But that's
Yeah.
the work.
That's the work. Lean into that discomfort. What does that tell you? There's something there to
Lean into
learn.
the trigger.
Yep.
Lean into the trigger. What's your secret? You didn't have a bad dream because you haven't been asleep. Good night. This is real life. Don't edit that.
Oh, no, I'm going to leave that in.
Or this is real life. Look, this is podcasting with kids. You haven't been to bed. You have not been asleep.
It was
Oh,
imagined,
man.
Mom. It was imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, back to our 3s. Speaking of, that's the resident 3 that he's trying it on. It's fitting. You know what's fascinating about that though? Back to my original comment of praise when achievement is given, right? Like you reach that achievement, praise. For
Yeah.
us, at least for me, I think I've talked about this lack of confidence that he has sometimes. So in a 6-year-old, that's like so sad to see as a mom. You're like, you're special. You're the best
Yeah.
kid ever. Don't
Right.
be so down on yourself. So I bring it up because parents have the best of intent, right? Most do, anyway.
Yes. Yes.
And when reward, so for him, when I reward, oh my gosh, you did it. That's amazing. It needs to be rooted in I'm proud of you because you're you, not because of what you achieved.
You did. Yeah.
So this has been, I would recommend all of this work for anyone, but especially as a parent when you're trying to navigate what your kid needs from you, how you show up as a parent because you're doing that work for yourself. Because I'll be the first to admit, like, I think pre this stuff, I was impatient. That's the work that I do with Brandon at Evolved Athlete a lot is, and I'm mirroring that because that was my experience,
Right.
was there was a lot of impatience, and that work in and of itself has made me a much more well-rounded version of myself for me, but also for them.
Right.
And if you think about it, even if you don't have kids, the them in your life are your friends, are your coworkers, are your significant other. The them that you're doing the work for in addition to yourself is only going to benefit all of those relationships.
Right. Yeah.
Says the two
Yeah.
relationships need value.
I
That's
think it's true
currency. That's
though. Yeah.
Benjamin's.
And in a lot of ways it is, and including the relationship you have with yourself. I mean, we could go down all kinds of rabbit holes on that topic, and maybe
Yeah.
at some point we will. But to kind of wrap on threes, is there anything else you would want to call out or add to the conversation about the threes?
Just a reminder to three is that they're more than their output and what they achieve. They're a whole ass human being that has
Yes.
value, that has so much to give, but so much to receive. So, like, leave open space.
Yeah.
The best advice that I can give a three is to leave open space because that leaves some room for some magic for a three where they may not even have been expecting it because they're so focused on what's to come.
Right. Yeah. That's really great advice. All right.
What else you got?
So on threes, I feel like there's more I could say, but it's not coming to my five brain right now on them. There's the threes that I do have in my life. There are some that are very special to me and mean a lot to me. And so I do think, to your point, right, they just like every number, but they bring a ton of value and they can just
Yeah.
be great to work with, to be friends with. I think of one three in particular who is just a really big cheerleader and supporter. Yeah, and I just can't, it's not possible to appreciate that enough. Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
So, yeah, so that was three. Well, I look forward to interviewing some threes. I
Yeah,
think we've
me
already
too.
got some threes lined up that would love to be interviewed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that should be fun too, to be able to get that kind of first person experience of the three.
Yeah. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that. And for those who are just finding us, Enneagram Adventure, follow us on YouTube. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. We are now launched live, ready to rock. So that means you're finding us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get
Yeah.
your podcasts. Follow us on social, Instagram, TikTok. We're consistently trying to upload new content and clips from our sessions. This is valued time for me. I hope it's valued time for everybody else listening. And hopefully we can help some folks get comfy in that discomfort and stay curious and continue learning about each other.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. We'll make sure that all of the places you can find us are in the show notes if you're on Spotify or Apple, and in the YouTube description if you're on YouTube. So,
Great.
and if you want to
Next
email
one,
us,
fours.
oh yes, yeah, fours. That'll be fun. So we're gonna talk about fours next. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in learning more about the Enneagram 4. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that.
I'm excited to talk about fours. I think I'm gonna pump myself up with some moody, like punk rock, thinking good Charlotte,
Charlotte.
back
Yeah.
to, some of that angsty, like
Yeah.
I am
Yes.
unique. I am
Yes.
I have special time.
Right.
So into fours, but yeah, if you want to email us
Yeah.
questions. We're seeing comments on social. I love that. Share what
Yes.
resonates with you, feedback, what doesn't resonate. Love to hear it.
Yeah. All the
Keep
things.
following us on the adventure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Tannah, talk about this more next week.
All right. See ya.
Bye.